that's fine. You don't have to speak at all. You can just be comforted that I just want women to understand that the applications are supposed to shut you up. They are. It's supposed to make you too uncomfortable on the street. I would but we've been called transphobic and bigoted and Nazis and white supremacists. In fact, I've been called a white supremacist sometimes more than my real name. And I really don't care. Because I don't know, I'm 50, so we had that sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt, and they don't. Words don't really hurt very much at all. Silence does. And silence is a really useful tool of authoritarian. It's far more powerful to silence your words than try and disagree with you. In fact, smearing is not as powerful as silence. And Ofcom, for example, and a friend who works in Ofcom, and it never occurred to her, and she's on a very good salary. But she's quite high up in Ofcom, and I said to her, you do know that what trans activists do is they know that you have to be balanced on the BBC, so they don't attend debates, which means we don't have the debate. And I feel like I don't know what it is with the Pakistani Muslim paedophile rape and torture gangs that have happened across this country, that means that we don't talk about it. How is it that it's not on everybody's lips like the whole time? And I include myself. It's not like I've spoken about nothing else for the last 6 years. But my first kind of amount of shaming, deplatforming and so on came because I had talked about this issue. Because I had talked about some things that I think are universally wrong. And it doesn't matter what culture or religion or country or household. It doesn't matter where those wrongs are. I think we should be allowed to talk about it as women. And I think sometimes people go, well, it's a choice. Well, and I'm just going to say it, because I can't not say it. I just can't. It makes me ill if I don't say the things I need to. But we have women serving 16 years in prison for revealing their hair and not wearing a hijab in Iran. So when people say this is a free choice, it is not a free choice. Those things are not free choices. When you have women stoned to death for not wearing a hijab, it is not a free choice to wear one. And it's yes. To claim that it is a choice, because it isn't. It's not a fashion item. It is something that can get you killed. In Iran, there are women now who can't even look out the window in Afghanistan and don't have a voice, and it doesn't come from nothing. Pulling out of thin air. It is carried through an ideology, and that ideology is authoritarianism, and that ideology comes in the form of a global religion which is growing very quickly, and I think we have to be mindful about how that looks and who uses it for their gain. And at the moment, I don't see any women able to use that particular ideology for their own furtherment. I just don't see it. So I thought I'd say it, because otherwise I'd kick myself. Because I know that it's probably not something you can say very loudly in a place like this. But there's an academic, a Muslim academic who lives in Holland, or Netherlands, I don't know what the politically correct title is for that country anymore. The people who wear orange when they play football, those people. And she talks about Sharia courts in this country are detrimental to women. They are really, really backward for women. And they are probably not the same as Sharia courts in... No, they probably are. They're really bad for women. There's not a woman that comes out with an outcome that isn't beneficial to the man that she enters into that court with. So I just think we have to be really, really careful, mindful, that as tolerant people, we don't start becoming a victim of that tolerance while we welcome in intolerance against us. Who would like to speak?
social worker, and I worked in Rochdale and I worked in Colindale together for 8 years. I also went to Bradford University, so I was out in the community there as well. So I've seen some dreadful things, and I've heard some pretty dreadful things, and I've been treated very badly as well for my views. In Rochdale, when I went to Rochdale, it was 1993, and they just got over the satanic ritual abuse investigation, which had lasted for I don't know how many years. Nobody talked about it. The whole team had left because they were treated so badly by the organisation. We were told that in a memo, you must not speak about this. If you do, you're sacked. So nobody spoke about it, of course. Also in Rochdale, I went to a child who was alleging that she was going to be sent to Pakistan the next day. And so we decided we'd go and speak to the parents in the house. We turned up, me and the social worker, and there were a line of men waiting for us, and they'd sat 2 chairs opposite them. So we were expected to discuss our concerns with this whole line of men. Nobody introduced themselves, no idea who they were. The only thing I would say is there was a bloody white counsellor right in the middle of them, you know, and like I say, it was absolutely terrible. So those were my 2 experiences in Rochdale. When I moved to Calderdale, which I gladly did, in 1995, I didn't really say anything at first. It was just quite lovely to get out of Rochdale. Terrible atmosphere in Rochdale. And I was glad to get out. But as I say, I went to Calderdale, joined a fantastic team. Never really saw anything wrong until I took a 14-year-old girl into care at her mother's request because the dad was sexually abusing her. And she went into a children's home, and after about a week we got together and we had a chat, and I wanted to talk to her. We got on really well. I used to go and see her every week. Then the first review came up, which is a meeting that everybody has. All the professionals have input, and we all put reports in, and everybody, you know, has a chat and what they want to say. And there's a reviewing officer who supervises her. So I went to see the girl and said, "What do you want to say? You know, have you got anything to say? Do you like it here? Have you got any complaints, etc.?" Oh, she said, "I'm going to London at the weekend." And I said, "I'm going to London with? I'm going to Bill and Ben with these care workers in this residential home." I said, "But what are you going to London for?" "I'm going to meet stereophonics. I'm going to stay in a hotel. I'm going to have a portfolio done. I'm going to be a model." I said, "You're not. Oh, no, you're not." And of course all this went into the report, and we get to the review. Reviewing officer reads it out. About a week later, I get called off that case. The reviewing officer gets the massive bonking of her life because she was told she should have never read it out. And I was told that anything I put into people's records would be checked and would be taken out if they didn't like it. As time went on, I found out there were loads of abuse going on in Calderdale as well, all the children's homes. There was a massive investigation at Skirkin Lodge. The girl where I put that girl was in Burnley Road. You know, you just couldn't credit it at all. It was totally corrupted from top down. Anyway, that's kind of my experience, or a bit of it. What I would like to say, finally, is if you've got children, if if you've got grandchildren, watch out, because they're going to start messing about with the children act. And what they're saying is they're going to make it easy for children, everything's going to be a lot better, they're going to change the syllabus, blah blah blah. What they're going to do is take your rights away. They're going to remove some of your parental rights. You won't dare speak up. If you don't like what the kid's coming home and saying, you're in trouble. You could end up being arrested. You know, so all I want to say is just watch out. I have to say there's some fabulous people like Sonia Poulton and John Wedger who are doing some fabulous work. John Wedger is the satanic specialist, satanic sexual abuse. And Sonia Poulton's a journalist who did a drama. Documentary called Paedophiles in Parliament. Please look at it. It will tell you so much more. I'll say that. Thank you very much.
Oh, consent. That's what children are going to be given the right. A long time ago I talked about Gillick, and it was used against me as if I'd suddenly turned into a rabid pro-lifer. But I think Gillick competence gives easy access to very vulnerable girls to contraception and abortion away from their parents or caregivers, people in a position of authority over those children, which should be parents. Sometimes can't be parents because the parents can't parent. But it's, you know, it's the same in the United States of America with Planned Parenthood. If a child, a minor, a girl, can go and access contraception, and she's far easier to traffic, right? I mean, it's a gift to traffickers, rather than try and sort out parents and children and ensure that parents don't lose the grip of rights over their children. We seem to just find these solutions all the time that just take the parents out of the equation. At the moment, our government is trying to sort of get your kids into state schools from about, 3.5 weeks, with 7 meals a day, all for free, that we all have to pay for. But the breakfast clubs, I don't think that's a good thing. If we really cared about our children, we'd be trying to make them have more time at home with well-paid parents who can actually afford to stay home and look after their children until their children are at least out of infancy. But instead of that, we have successive governments that just keep trying to tell you, oh, we can give them 5-day-a-week care from 3 months, from 6 months, from 9 months. How about mum? How about mum's care? And I don't mean, ladies, let's go back to a time that, my family could never afford for women to stay home. But let's not go back to a time where women aren't in the workforce, but let's go back to a time where women who do crappy jobs that they don't like very much don't have to rush back to do the crappy job to pay somebody else to look after their child who also doesn't really enjoy her job. Let's do that. I mean, it's not that difficult, is it? How much does it cost? I mean, how many people do you know that can't work more than 20 hours a week because then they have to pay so much for their kids? They have to pay for lunches, school trips, and then, I could go on and rant for ages about this, but I won't. But there is a massive disconnect between what we know to be humanity, humane, and the things that we are being pushed into that tear our families apart, that take our voices away, that take our rights away, that take our connections with our children away. And something has got to give, and I think at the moment it's at such an accelerated speed that the only response to any of this eventually is going to be white anger. And I mean like white rage. blood red, or use a different colour. Human rage. That's what I mean. Like just absolute rage because they keep hitting you in the head and telling you that nothing's happening to you. And I don't know what the answer is to that, besides people getting more and more confused and then angry. And what we saw last summer, which was called far-right riots, which actually started as people a little bit concerned, a lot concerned about the murder of 3 little girls in a dance class, which seemed to coincide with somebody else plotting to bomb a Taylor Swift concert, and then we had the bombing of Ariana Grande's concert. It's no coincidence that there's girls, young girls and women going to watch these artists that were killed. It's no coincidence that that's the target. And what happened about that? When people got angry and said, finally, we're going to go and take a march, you know, a bit like the BLM marches. Do you remember those? Because they were virtually, like, they were just peaceful and wonderful, and we all joined in, and our politicians took a knee. And do you remember those 3 little girls died, and our politicians, and the police, didn't join in. Didn't take a knee, didn't find some virtue in that anger, didn't kind of come out and everyone say, isn't it a shame, we must all. I mean, maybe if those 3 little girls had been, I don't know, in America and killed, and we could have borrowed the outrage and replicated it somehow, and it wasn't really our own, maybe it'd have been all right. But it just seems that this thing is like any other thing. If you talk about it, it's far worse than the actual act of it. Talking about the Pakistani, Muslim, paedophile, rape and torture gangs that operate with impunity throughout this country, talking about them is far, far worse than the actual suffering and the rapes of those girls. Talking about it is worse. Talking about a man getting his penis out in your child's changing room, in your daughter's changing room, is far, far worse than the indecent exposure, criminal act of that man showing his genitals to your kids. Because that's where we are right now. Don't you dare talk about it, and if you talk about it, you better use some weird language where you say, I just hope the far right don't take this because it's terribly racist. It's going to cause outrage. The far right response to the rapes is going to cause outrage. Do you know what, mate? I reckon the rapes, knowing about the rapes, is going to cause the outrage. I think that might be a source of any of the responses, because if our government, our police, our social workers, our councils, our teachers, our foster carers, our women's, like well-funded women's sector, don't start talking about this, you leave a lovely little vacuum, and anything happens that you don't like will be your fault. So that's what I want to say about this whole kind of, those people talking about it, they're going to cause people to be racist. No, mate. The rape's happening, and you not talking about it, that's what's going to cause the outrage. That's what's going to cause the violence, the protest, and the things that nobody wants. It is the suppression of truth that often causes the most anger. Because if we're all dealing with it, we can deal with it, right? Like I tell my kids, just don't lie. I'm like, you could have stolen all the biscuits, just don't lie. Because the lie is something I can't deal with. That's what we teach our kids. And then our politicians are like, well, I think, there's child sexual exploitation everywhere. Oh, is there? All right, well, let's not talk about that then. Because if it's everywhere, if it's a white men that have done it, then let's not talk about this culture being bred in this particular community. Let's not talk about that, because that would be racist. I mean, I don't remember, Jimmy Savile, he did some great charity work. And we should never have criminalised Jimmy Savile or talked about him, because there are other men that have systematically groomed children. So we shouldn't talk about Jimmy Savile, because that's prejudice against really seedy men in gold lame. So lifelong perverts. And I think what we have to remember as well, because some of us who haven't been involved in this, and I know some of you here have been involved and have been on the front line trying to help these girls, or have been victims yourselves, or know friends that have been victims. But for some of us, it's difficult to imagine the depravity in these minds of these men. And let's remember, sometimes there were 10 or 11 of them in the room with one small girl that they tortured and raped and put cigarettes out on her. And they might have been brothers and uncles and cousins, or maybe sometimes all in one. We don't really know, but they knew each other very, 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 very well. And they were just allowed to get away with it. Are we saying that they were decent to their wives? Are we saying that when they went home, they had these wonderful houses or these lovely, happy families, and they treated their daughters well? No. We know that they weren't. We know that if you have that much evil in your mind about girls, that doesn't translate to something kind of pretty wholesome at home. So to all of those Muslim women and girls, the daughters raised in the households of these men, I just want to say, there is a place for you if you ever want to speak about it. Don't think that this is against you, this is against men in your communities. It is not against the women and the girls who had to suffer these men also. You'll find liberation too, you never know. You can liberate yourselves from the authoritarianism that has been just forced upon you probably your whole lives. But there is no reason for any Muslim woman to feel the shame of her father if she knows that he was committing these atrocities. I just want to make that really, really clear. This is about the men. This is about the men that thought they were kings in their own home, and then acted like predatory, horrible rapists, torturers when they were out. And I think they probably did that at home too.
Oh dear. Hi, my name's Belle Staffy. I've lived, thank you. There's a bit of weight on because I stopped smoking 6 months ago, so I think, who's that last woman? It's me now, I'm afraid. Right, I'm just going to very briefly want to write an article on this to be published, okay? I've been up here since 1988, and I started work as a student social worker at Bradford University, and part of my placement was at some local authority children's homes, okay? Now, the difference between a local authority children's home and a secure unit is the local authority children's home are homes for very vulnerable children, but who are not under lock and key. That means these homes are treated as homes. The doors are left open. If they want to go out, they can go out. Secure units is if they want to go out, you can detain them.
They must know about
you can stop them because it's a secure unit. Okay. After a few weeks of working at one particular children's home in West Yorkshire, in a town that ends in end of November, and I don't want to go into any more detail about that. I became aware when I got off the bus going up to the home on a Friday. It was a Friday when it was very busy, after tea, after mosque, there'd be a load of very smart cars, black cars, BMWs, Audis, you know, with all blacked out windows. And sometimes there's so many of them parked around this children's home, local authority children's home, that it would look like a funeral, like there's a funeral going on there. As I walked up, I would look into the cars, and every driver would be a very young, very, very good-looking young man of Pakistani heritage. Okay. On a Friday, after tea
Said she
and
was
after
from a
mosque,
town with it ended in
girls would run
Yorkshire.
upstairs, girls of 12, 13, 14, 15,
Unless I'm
16.
absurd.
They would run upstairs and get stuff in their bags, and then they would do a runner out the front door. Now I've clicked that, we've all clicked that these cars were cars with Pakistani men in of grooming gangs. There were no Asian Pakistani girls in the home. The girls were mainly white working class girls, mixed race girls. The girls ran by us with stuff, and I said to my senior, I had no power, I was a student social worker, and I'd say, why can't we stop them? Can't we stop them? And she said to me, this woman who's in her 50s, who was my supervisor, if you put a hand on one of those girls to try and stop her going out the door, she said, you will be done, quite rightly, for assault. This is a local authority care home, not a secure unit. If we lock the doors after tea and after mosque, that's imprisoning the girls. These are criminal offences. We can't stop it. I was just gutted that we couldn't do anything. We were supposed to be there to protect. These girls were in these homes, in this home in West Yorkshire with town ending with N, to escape Rotherham and all these other cities, Rochdale. They were being moved from being groomed from these towns to this home in West Yorkshire. Okay? Within these homes, there was older girls who were very disturbed, young women, and then they used to speak to the younger girls or the newer girls and recruit them to run with them and have fun, smoke. They'll give you cigs, they'll give you vodka, they'll give you cannabis. Now, I'm sorry, but any working class girl at 13, 14 and 15 who's being offered free cigarettes, free alcohol and free cannabis is going to go. And that was the grooming process. The grooming process started with substances. We took the numbers down of the cars. I think they were just thrown in the bin. I said to my senior, why can't this is happening regularly? Why can't we do something about it? And she said, well, if we write their ethnicity down, it will upset social cohesion. So if I tell the truth, predominantly white, very young girls, and they were very disturbed girls. And what will end on is on Sunday night, when these girls used to be returned, these girls would be looked like they'd been mauled by animals, because they had been mauled by animals. Some of them were still high as a kite on drugs, and they were up and down, amphetamines and that. Some of them were completely silent and withdrawn and disassociated. There was one girl we had to call an ambulance to because there were only children here. She was bleeding so badly from her anus. And we couldn't do anything. Local authority care home. And you'd think that, and I still can't get over it. And I'd forgotten this period of my work life until about a year ago when Maggie Oliver wrote something about the grooming in Rotherham and Rochdale in 2002. And I thought, hang on a minute, this was happening in 91, 92, 93. I'd seen it happening, and I'd seen the results of the girls coming back in who were mauled, literally bruised, mauled, and they wouldn't say who they'd been with, but the the attraction was that these groomers, these rapists, made them feel like grown-ups. And to make a child, any working class child, feel like a grown-up, you offer them cigs, you offer them a vodka, you make them feel grown up, and then the sex comes into it. Well, you've had all that, and it's part of it. This is part of being grown up. And that's really what I'd like to kind of, I don't want to go on too much about it because it is, I'm not a girl. I blocked this out for nearly 30 years. Them not being able to physically stop. I felt guilty because I was part of the problem, except I had no power whatsoever. Even if I'd gone out with a hammer and smashed the windscreen, I wouldn't have qualified as a social worker. I would have had an offence of criminal damage. So I wouldn't have been able to. I have not played the game and not said, not reported this, I would not have qualified as a social worker, and I would not have been a sex offender specialist. And after working in the children's homes, the local authority ones, with this going on, especially on a Friday night after mosque, I couldn't work with children after that, and I decided to work for 20 years with the perpetrators, the groomers, the rapists. And that's how I got to be a specialist in that type of behaviour, because when I worked with those girls, I just wanted to cry. And it's not about me, it's not about me, because it has a ripple effect. The effect on me is I wasn't much older than some of them, about 10 years older. The effect on me was devastating, and I blocked it out for 30 years. And it was Maggie Oliver, who is an icon to me, that she tricked a memory with just some dates. And I was thinking, yeah, we had the girls from Rotherham to keep away from the grooming gangs in Rotherham. That's why we put them in Leeds. And then it all started coming back. And the worst was standing there, not being able to protect them in any way whatsoever, talk them out of it. And the worst was the results when they came back.
Well, we're probably only dodgy to here anyway, aren't we, looking?
Who have been mauled by adult
I think it's because it's about abuse and the dark days.
within West Yorkshire. That was Leeds, and it went on all over the place, all up and down the country. I actually thought it was the normal
That's why I
thing.
don't think there's a kind of vote.
It's a national, and it's been going on for 60 years. Because before the white girls were led into the cars and groomed, it was the Sikh girls that were targeted by Pakistani men, using the boyfriend model, put the best looking one out, the young one, and then take the girls off, because they'll go with a young man who's very pretty, and there's some very pretty Pakistani men, and then they would meet the rest of the grooming gang. So that's what I've got, and that's based, and I still feel horribly limp and helpless. Those girls are hopefully all grown up now. They're all survivors. Many of them will have gone on into prostitution, and I know that because I did a lot of work in prostitution in Holbeck. Some of them will have committed suicide, some of them will be on drugs. I hope most of them manage to deal with that trauma that will have gone on for months and months and months. I hope, bless them. I guess I can't say anything else really.
Many women up and down the country who had similar experiences of helplessness. I think sometimes when you realise, and obviously this was one of my first issues that I talked about, but then I've talked a lot about women's autonomy over the last few years with regard to our spaces. And I just remember that you think, well, if I tell people, if I'm that young trainee social worker and I say, hey, do you know what's happening to those girls? Someone will go, oh my gosh, let's stop it. Here's the way that we stop it. These are the safeguarding, this is what you can do, and then we can just stop it. And we can put like a curfew of 7 o'clock on the house, but we have mechanisms, we have safeguarding policies in place that stop these girls from being vulnerable to this abuse. And I think it's so shocking when you realise that there weren't any, that actually taking the knee to what we'll be doing in schools of critical race theory and other theories that are just about silencing people, and the thing that they're intended for, I don't even think is a good thing. I don't even think there are people trying to implement this silencing on what you can and cannot say, and the history that you have to revise. I don't think there is a good motive for doing it at all. I think you're either completely stupid or evil. I don't think there's any way in between when it comes to how we silence people. But like a previous speaker said, just be mindful of the things that your schools are doing, because we are in really dangerous territory with this very authoritarian government. I don't know if you follow, I think she's called Womando on Twitter, and she does the sentences that paedophiles get. She shows you the sentences. And do you remember the woman who, I mean, it was a terrible tweet, it was an awful tweet. I'm not going to defend her tweet, the Tory party's councillor's wife. And she tweeted something, she deleted it, she realised it was a stupid thing to say. And somehow, that was crowbarred when it was like, oh, I wish they'd just do this. That was made incitement. Well, I thought incitement would be if I said to all of us today, hey, why don't we all, and then, I don't know, buy me a Lamborghini. Well, that would be incitement to make my ego feel even better, right? So if I said, oh, I wish everyone would just get a Lamborghini, that is not incitement, is it? I wish everyone could just give me some, but if I just said, now you all must, let's do it together, right now, 7 o'clock, let's go and do it. I think that's incitement. I think it was a really dodgy charge. And then she's offered what? Well, if you do this, a bit of good behaviour, you get a reduced sentence. And all these people who don't have lawyers, who don't have access to really good legal representation, their lawyers are like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, you know, just plead guilty to a non-crime that they're charging for and pretending it's a crime. Just plead guilty. And then, Free Speech Union, someone said to me. Free Speech Union. Join them. Join Let Women Speak first. And so anyway, so they pleaded guilty, like foolish. These super quick courts, you know, like the courts to deal with paedophile and rapists. Those super quick courts where cases are just heard really quickly because there's an urgency about it. Unlike those, you know, super quick, put people in prison for words thing. Anyway, what Amanda does is so this woman got put away for 26 months prison. No remand either, so she was held from the moment she was arrested. And then you've got paedophiles who only got 3 weeks suspended sentence. What had he done? He'd only looked at 80,000 images of like the worst category of child. He'd only done that. He's only a predatory paedophile that maybe hasn't been caught doing something yet, but he's downloading lots of practice pictures. But he's not a scourge on society, unlike those terrible rioters, unlike those people that were protesting about stuff. They're a scourge on society, they're a threat to the establishment. But not the paedophiles, because the only conclusion is what? That there are paedophiles represented in all strata, that there's a nice little handshake you can do, you can all join in together. Is that what we're talking about? Because that's what it feels like we're talking about. It feels like I haven't even seen Eyes Wide Shut, so this might not be the right reference. But it kind of feels like we're all in this world where people are going, no, there's nothing going on. There's nothing going on at all. No. What you think that just because that judge said you're a good man, I know you've abused quite a few kids, but you've done some charity work, you're a good man, that why would you think that that judge is also a paedophile? What a crazy conclusion. Turn a blind eye to those rape gangs, turn a blind eye. Why is that? Oh, it's policy, yes, policy. Social cohesion, is social cohesion another word for, hang on a minute, Dave, I'm involved? Is that another word for that? Is it another word for, there are some benefits to us as a police force, as a social work service, as a foster care system, as a care worker service, there is some benefit to us to continue to enable the rape and torture of working class white girls. And there's always a payoff. I don't believe in altruism. I don't think anyone was saying, well, I'd quite like those Pakistani Muslim gangs to have access because I'm a nice person. No, there's a benefit to every single person that turned a blind eye or enabled it. There is a benefit to them, a tangible benefit to them, and only a really good inquiry on a local and national level will reveal what the payoff was. Was it money? Was it drugs? Was it cover-up? Was it criminality? Was it joining in? What was it? And that's the only thing that will answer these questions. And if I was in the police force here, which I understand historically, if not right now, and I thank you all for coming, but historically and right now, most of the officers join the police force to uphold the law, not to protect paedophile, rapists and torturers. That's not why they joined. The pension's not that good. There's someone there benefiting from a pension apparently. She said they're quite good pensions. I don't know. Maybe they are in comparison, but these police officers put themselves on the line. We know that what do we want to do when we want protection? What do we want to do? We want to be able to call, and that didn't happen for those girls. But that's why many people join the police force, because they genuinely believe in upholding the law and protecting citizens. Can you imagine how it would have felt for those officers also to turn up at that house where all those men were taking advantage of those girls and then arrest the girls? I mean, I see it at Speaker's Corner, where you see a woman defending Christianity and she's arrested and taken in a police van. Like, it's an upside down business that we're in right now. And that's why none of us feel very safely and securely moored to reality. Because the object is to unmoor you from reality, so therefore you have chaos. When you have chaos, then you have authoritarianism that has to come in and tell you how you have to behave every second of every minute of every day. That's just how it works. That's how they'll get you. They'll make you angry. Is it first the gods seek to destroy, they make mad. And I just feel right now that they're really trying to make us all mad. So just hold your words, because that's another thing that us, and I know I sound terribly posh, but us working class people, and I'm probably not working class anymore, but I do have a big TV. So in many ways I feel I'm still more to that particular reality. And I wear expensive sunglasses, but I don't pay my bills on time. So what they do, what the effect, the way that they get you all, is because if you're a victim and you sound too eloquent, did it really happen? Was it really that bad? If you're a victim and you sound quite angry and maybe you swear and maybe you can't hold your temper, well then, who would listen to you, and no wonder. And then if you're another sort of victim and maybe you don't make it, or maybe you make it with drugs, and maybe you make it with cycles of repeated abuse after abuse after abuse, then did you ask for it? So there is no, that's the way they get you. The way they get us working class people. I'm really sorry. I don't quite know where I am on the class structure of this country. But the way they get working class people is they make you sound aggressive, and they make you sound stupid, and they make you sound like you're savages. That's what they do, and then nobody has to listen to you. They can get you on a program and they can badger you and they can badger you and they can badger you, and they can hit you over the head repeatedly with their rhetoric. And no matter what comes out of your mouth, if you're not smiling, if you're not using the right words, then nobody has to listen to a damn thing you say. So just be really mindful. Hold your temper as much as you possibly can when you speak about this. But don't hold the content. Don't hold anything back. Don't be afraid of saying Pakistani, Muslim, paedophile, rape and torture gangs. Don't be frightened to say it, because they don't want you to say it. But don't be afraid to say it every single time. And I know some people want us to use grooming gangs because that's how they got the girls. But they were rapists and torturers. They use grooming as a method so they can rape and torture. And they did. I mean, I can't imagine what the gathering was like. Well, you go. You're the good-looking one. You can pick them up and then bring them in, and then we'll all. I mean, just dear God, it's just never-ending evil. It's just never-ending evil. So, would anyone else like to speak? Yes.
So today I'm not speaking my own words, I'm speaking my friend's words. You might know her from Twitter, Itch, or when was right about dinner. There is so much that I could say about the rape gang situation, but what I'd like to focus on today are some of the destruction techniques that gets used to minimize our anger at these particular crimes and their cover-up. We are continually told that girls raped by immigrant rape gangs are only a small part of the overall child sex abuse figures, that most child rapes are committed in the home by white men. I've even seen TERFs use this argument, not just sock femmes, actual TERFs. It's okay for some women to focus our attention on one element of child sexual abuse and male depravity, just as anti-surrogacy campaigners focus on one aspect of the exploitation of women based on our reproductive capacity. That is, after all, what TERFs have done with regard to men who claim to be women. We highlight the boundary erosion and added risk posed to women and girls by this particular group of men. We point out that we did not consent to these men being in our spaces, that we already face enough risk for men without this added burden. I would argue that the same applies to these rape and torture gangs, the majority of whom are Pakistani or Muslim immigrants from other countries. We were not asked if we were okay with mass immigration of men from cultures that managed to be even more overtly rapey and misogynistic than ours. We did not consent to these men being in our country, just as we did not consent to trans-identified men being in our spaces. All rapists are men, that is true. There is no safe demographic of men. It is also true that some demographics of men pose more of a risk to women and girls than others. We know this is the case for trans-identified men. We have demonstrated the truth of that claim through crime reports and prison statistics. We have stood up to the name-calling and obfuscation. We don't crumble when we're told that trans women only commit a small amount of male violence against women and girls. We must do the same when detractors tell us that rape and torture gangs only represent a small amount of child sexual abuse, when we are called racist, Islamophobic, far-right and bigoted for highlighting this particular problem. We know that rape is an act of hatred, not sexual desire. Men rape women and girls because they despise us. They are misogynists living in a porn-soaked misogynist society. Rape gang members target mostly white British girls because of additional hatreds, hatred of non-Muslim women and hatred of white women. We know this because they tell their victims, they are white trash, that their religion allows them to rape non-Muslims. And yet, we are accused of hatred for speaking out and identify which men commit these particular crimes. Crime data from all across Europe shows that immigrant men from non-European countries are far more likely than European men to sexually assault and rape women and girls, especially in a group. We might not like what this data shows us, but we should not ignore it, no matter how uncomfortable it is, no matter what names we are called for raising it. We are told not to focus on this demographic of men or to mention their religion or ethnicity. But imagine what would be happening if gangs of white Englishmen had deliberately targeted immigrant Muslim girls for rape, torture and trafficking, and the establishment had helped them cover it up for decades. Every aspect of English culture, group identity and toxic white masculinity would be under scrutiny. The men's race, culture and religion, or lack of religion, would be discussed at every possible opportunity. We can't have sacred castes of men who are protected from criticism or scrutiny. It doesn't matter if they're vicars, Druze, Pakistanis, Muslims or immigrants. We must be able to speak out about male violence against women and girls wherever we find it. At times, some of us will focus on one or another particularly pressing form of male violence, and that's absolutely okay. So as Kelly J would say, be brave, because if not you, who? If not now, when? These gangs have been operated with near impunity for over 50 years. We shouldn't have to live like this. We must not be silenced. Thank you for listening, and thank you to Let Women Speak for giving women the opportunity to speak out on this topic.
Okay, did anyone else want to speak? All right then. Yes? She's unknown.
Hi everyone. I didn't really come here I didn't really come here to speak, but I did feel moved to say I wish Kelly J would put a bit more effort into her appearance on these events.
We'll do it till the
But to
next
sit and put
speakers.
this rough bag in front of us, please put a bit more effort in next time. Maybe I can do something. No, I actually on this occasion, I think I did a lot of and to just really to try to let people that are finally on their coach to do that 10-15 years after everyone else. The women that I've been sitting on X, that I've been following the survivors who have been calling for national public inquiry into this, and I've learned a lot from seeing what they've had to say. And I must admit, you know, I thought there had been this public inquiry. You know, I remember years back reading the J report about Oldham, and I didn't always keep track of them, and then I knew there was the well, that's it, there has been this, and you know, so it's very easy when you're hearing government saying we've got to get on and implement. I think, you know, a lot of us feel, well, yes, because I don't know how much pain I ever had in these public inquiries. They seem to go on for years and years and years, and then whatever things they try and put in motion also seems to go on for years and years. So we've seen with, you know, the infected blood scandal, you know, a lot of the people who, you know, should have received compensation have died in the meantime. The same with the post office scandal, you know, there was women, yeah, there was women, and you know, there's some postmasters and postmistresses, big post office scandal. You know, so many of those people died in absolutely, you know, just their lives devastated before anything happened. So I remember the calls were like, well, let's implement
Thank you. Absolutely not.
But I do having seen these transcripts. Do you know, I remember at the time when the verdicts came out from the Oxford rape and torture trials, and I remember, even though that was quite a long time ago now, I remember the BBC reporter saying that the details of this is too distressing and we can't broadcast them, and that stayed in my mind all this time because the details they did broadcast were absolutely horrific. And so of course now we're actually seeing some of these details which are, well, you don't need me to say, you know, they really defy any kind of verbal response we can give them, don't they? So I do think that what is just starting to unfold now, and isn't the power of social media is just so weird, what suddenly gets a spotlight shone on it, you know, it seems almost a bit, well it probably isn't randomly, but it seems to be a bit random. Well, you know, all of a sudden there was a drama on the post office scandal, and suddenly everyone was talking about that. Now, years after we've known about this, now there's all this social media attention by, you know, the richest man in the world, and everyone's talking about this, but let's make sure that we keep on not just talking about it, but there is, you know, that there is finally a last voice of these survivors will be heard and listened to. And so I do think that what is being exposed, the nature of it, the specificities of it, you know, actually what went on it's a thing in and of itself. It's not just part of a wider child sexual abuse. I mean, obviously there was child rape on a mass scale going on, but the nature of it, the circumstance of it, the fact that it was allowed to continue with, not with complete impunity, you know, there have been some convictions, but nothing like on the scale that should have happened for what we now know has been going on.
I mean, the Manchester one would be
so I just want to lend my support to those women like Sammy Woodhouse and others that I've been following, Maggie Oliver's voice, you know, all of these women I'm sure we're all following, to say, yes, we will do what we can to support and amplify your voices, so that finally that some kind of revelation and really unflinching investigation of what went on and how this was allowed to happen and surely that call for a public inquiry, it doesn't stop any of the recommendations of, you know, that have been established. It doesn't stop them happening. Of course they should be implemented. I mean, to be honest, this mandatory reporting, I thought you had a legal obligation to report as soon as someone disclosed something, you know, they put them in a serious risk. I thought there was you know, I've always understood that there was a mandatory requirement to report. So obviously that should happen anyway. So nothing, I don't think that we're saying the recommendations that have already been developed, but let's not shy away from the reality of what's going on. It has to be properly uncovered, and the voices of those survivors that have just started to be listened to, let them be heard.
Hello everyone, this is my first time doing this. hi today. White snow. Getting there. Well, doctor, getting in. Thankfully, the man she was with. Who do you think got arrested? A friend that she was on the date with that defended her, stopped her from getting dragged into the car. In my house, there's a female police officer. When I was explaining, and when she was explaining what had gone on, they weren't interested in what she was having to say. They weren't listening. It was as if they had a different script. I wonder where that script comes from. It's political. It's political, and it's infiltrated down. I have no qualms with the police. The police do a very difficult job, but they are reading off the script. Now, in my house, this police officer tried to tell me that it was just boys being boys. And they also accused her of trying to start a riot, because she's right. Imagine losing herself, she's fighting for one accused of trying to start a riot. So this is the state of play we are in. You know, where I live, it's a type of place. It's got tapas bars, wine bars. You know, it's a nice place. This happened 300 yards outside her house, minding her own business, with a fella she was out on a date with. And we've got to the stage now where people, you know, cruising around in cars and grabbing at girls. So this is political, right from the top, all the way down. It's not only just Oldham, all these other places. It's nice villages that happen to be outside towns. Now, she now lives in Italy. She's safer there. I wonder why she's safer there. Because they wouldn't put up with this shit. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
I'd like to say that's the first time I've ever heard anything like that, but it's not. Somebody shared their story on Twitter about their daughters trying to be dragged into a car by a group of men, and then other people joining and said, "Oh, it's happened to my daughter too." My husband's been watching this thing about soldiers, and I've had the pleasure of watching it as well, because I, you know, like most women, I love the Second World War. And everything's ever been told about it. It's just my thing. But I was watching it, and I was watching these men, and obviously it's a dramatisation, but I was just thinking about my own grandfather and men that came before us and fought. And I just thought, who are those men now? Like, who would my grandfather, who got on that boat, and when he was on that boat, the men that weren't coming home knew they weren't coming home. And I guess I still have the memory, and I got that first story told by my grandfather to me. So it's a very real story for me. It's not a picture, it's not a book, it's not some testimony that I've read somewhere about some account of something. It's a really real story. And I just thought, who are those men? Well, they're the men that went out and got arrested for fighting and causing a riot. And I'm not saying that all of them were not criminal, and I'm not saying all of them were great people at all. But I'm saying that the men in our society right now, who get most of our condemnation and our kind of bad press, bad view, see them as oiks, they're the front line men. They're the men that would be cannon fodder, right? So we just have to try and step back sometimes and see things with a really broad focus. The only reason hundreds and thousands of girls across this country were raped and tortured by Pakistani, Muslim, paedophile grooming gangs was because we didn't care enough about the girls to stop it. I mean, we can say it's loads of other stuff and how that manifests. How did it manifest? Well, you don't want to be racist, but racist against what? Rape. The sacrifice of our girls, or being seen as being racist. Not even being racist, just being seen as being racist. And we chose the sacrifice of our girls. There's nothing else that makes sense. Government, will you do an inquiry? Well, we've done one. Okay, can you do two? Can we have two? Can we just have two? For the thousands upon thousands, just two. For the thousands upon thousands upon thousands of girls, can we have two? Can we make each council do one? Can we arrest some people? Do you reckon we could do that? Those women that sent those girls back out when that girl came home and asked for money for a taxi, and then went out and got raped again. She'd been raped, she got home, she used a taxi to try and get, and they wouldn't pay. Can we arrest some people there, please? Is that not a crime? If it's a crime for me to go and, I don't know, go to that safe deposit box centre and go and steal something from it, if that's a crime, an arrestable offence, and there's a name and a statute and a legislation and a crime, if that's one of those things, why is it not a crime to sit back and put your feet up while girls in your town, while you're the council leader of Oldham, why is it not a crime to allow those girls to be raped? What are we doing? All these reviews, like Julia said, we have these reviews, we have these inquiries, and what happens? Sweet FA, nothing. Well, you know, we think that maybe those girls shouldn't have been raped. Well, do you? Oh, that's amazing. And what would you do about it? Well, we put some other safeguarding procedures in place, like what? Would you arrest someone if they went against the safeguarding policy? Can we do that? Like, it's only when it's got to be punitive, and it's got to cost the individual for allowing harm to come to an individual in their care. It's got to start costing those people. You've got to be guilty of something, aside from being immoral. You've got to be guilty of something. It's got to start costing people who turn a blind eye to this. It's got to start, like, if you're on a nice big fat chief of police salary and you're forced to totally abandon these girls, or maybe if you receive a letter from Gordon Brown, I don't know if that's true, I don't know which Gordon Brown they're talking about. But if you were to receive a letter from a politician saying, well, we're not going to look at that, we're not going to look at that, or as a police force, we have this policy, we're not going to do that, why aren't you guilty of something? It just doesn't make sense to me. So I want to see arrests, naming, shaming, blacklisting, making people unemployable, losing their pensions. I see you, I'll raise you, losing their pensions. But that's what we want to see. We want to see if you do wrong by others and allow the most depraved treatment of vulnerable people that you're supposed to be looking after, you're paid to look after, then I want to see there's some sort of punishment, criminal hopefully, for each and every person who was party to that. But thank you very much, Oldham. I'm really, really glad we came. I hope women across the country and girls, if you're in these vulnerable positions or have ever been, if there's something that you want to stand up so your warm body in these freezing cold temperatures will be like the penguins. But if you want to come and show support, we are going to go to lots of towns and cities, and we are just going to keep doing it. And if I'm the only person that speaks, I mean, it's fine by me, but I think it'll get quite boring. But hopefully what this does to everyone looking on is it shows you that there is a place to speak, and the more of you that speak and the more of you that show courage, the more people that will feel that they can show courage too. So thank you so much, Oldham. I'm sorry that we had to come in these circumstances, but thank you.
Thank you.
Get some close-ups of her. See if you can get some close-ups. I don't know if you got enough. How do you know her?
Well done.
There's Oldham ends then. I can't work it out, but that's not Yorkshire. Perhaps I'm thinking it's because they knew it were about abuse and it'd look bad. That's what I'm thinking. But maybe, I mean, it's only 2 minutes from Manchester, so it's, you know, it's like the Sheffield one was, you know, it got a big one there, but that's all I can think of.
I took some pictures of you. Did you? From Costa Rica. You were still
As I came in, I saw people.
That's what I get. Just a lemon soda.
Last.
know, who wears a suit, the guy that wears a suit and the American kid. Remember? There's that meme where it's like, where he eats that fast food and he goes, my disappointment is amazing, my days. You know who he is, don't you?
Stranger in the car.
Always wear suits. You know what? I'm not saying this to be mean. I think he is quite a, it's just observation I made.